Hi everyone and welcome along. Now I've got your next summer painting project because I'm really noticing how many people are out there painting on their holidays for fun. That makes me so happy. So how about this? A very cute little card inspired by a postage stamp. Now of course we're not all going to Plymouth on our holidays, but I thought you might also like to learn how to paint a little lighthouse. So this turns into a really gorgeous little card to send to someone. So grab your paints and let's get started. So I'm back with another folded card. So here's a piece of watercolour paper that I've scored down the middle. The full length of it is 9 inches, so I scored it at 4.5 in the middle, and then it's 5 inches high. And what I've done is just draw a small rectangle, which is 2 by 2.5 inches. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a little postage stamp design on this. And I thought this would just be a really fun little way of painting the places you visited this summer on your summer holidays. And I thought I would do a rather iconic lighthouse at Plymouth called Smeaton's Tower. So, and I get asked a lot if I could paint lighthouses, so I thought this would just be a very satisfying way of doing a few things at once. So I've got it sort of slightly on the wonk, you see, and then I'm going to just curve the top, put a few little rings around, and then fan out the sort of barrier guardrail, and then finish it off with 2 verticals and little oval of the roof. There we go, and then we need the stripes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these sort of reflect the curve. There we go. So you can see that the curve's upwards and then it gets flatter and then starts to go downwards, and that's a really helpful way of showing height and perspective. And then we'll have a few windows on it. Lovely. And then what I'm going to do is a nice horizontal line for the sea out there, and then a bit of a sort of land on the other side. And yeah, I think that's rather nice. Maybe put a path next to it. I think that looks rather lovely. So I'm going to just roll out the pencil a little bit with my kneadable eraser. So you could take any place you'd been. It's like the equivalent of writing a postcard, I suppose, but you're painting it yourself. Any place you've been, and just try and simplify the building, the details, the landscape into sort of some simple little line drawings like I've done. And I'm going to start by painting in some of the background areas. So let's start with the ocean. So let's get a slightly more turquoisey feel. I'm just waking up all the blues and turquoises in my palette. It's funny, some of these I haven't used for a little while. There we go. Windsor blue is a great one. So I've got Windsor blue, aqua green, cerulean blue, and French ultramarine. And I'm going to use my size 0 brush, and I think I'll start with the Windsor blue, painting it in with some little bits of unpainted space. And just coming in with the aqua green there. You could paint this with a larger brush, but the areas are quite small that we're working in, so I thought let's just make our life a little bit easier. So I hope you've got some nice plans for summer vacations. I wonder if any of you have seen this lighthouse before. Plymouth is a very famous coastal city down in Devon. Okay, I'm now going to take a slightly large brush size 2 because now I'm going to paint in the sky, and I'm going to sort of leave a few blobs of unpainted space to create some clouds. Oh, you can see I've got a little bit of pink on my brush still from a previous project. That's why I'm getting a bit of pink in my paint. It's not the end of the world. But it is worth having a piece of kitchen roll or paper towel on your painting station, just so you can avoid too many situations like that. And then what I'm doing, whilst the paint is sort of starting to dry, I'm just drawing in the colour a little bit. Up onto the cloud. And then I've cleaned my brush off, and just with that I'm just softening it on the lower edge, and it sort of acts like a little bit of a shadow. And just makes simple sort of little illustrated clouds just that little bit more interesting. Okay, and the nice thing about working on a small scale like this is the colours will dry on the page quite nice and quickly, allowing us to just keep moving on. So I'm going to take some green gold, size 2 brush feels really perfect for this now, and then green gold again. And then some sap green, just going to sort of layer it on. Sort of dry brushing it on to get a bit of texture on the grass there. And maybe just a little bit but not quite as much on this side edge, because it helps give the sense that that grass is a little bit closer, so the colour is a little bit stronger. and then just in the distance here a little less intense. And then talking about colour and things of land in the distance, this area here is also going to be land, but we're going to just knock it back, that green gold back, with a bit of Payne's grey to desaturate it a little bit. Because you want your colours in the distance to be a little paler and a little cooler, and that helps convey this sense of distance, even in such a simple illustration like this. So a little bit of extra Payne's grey in there. Okay, now it's time to have a look at our lighthouse. Now a lighthouse is white, well, white and red stripes, cream and red stripes. So I'm just going to clear up these colours, and we'll get some fresh water as well, and then we'll start painting the stripes. Here I have some buff titanium, and I'm going to take a very small amount of Payne's grey just to cool it down a bit, and it's nice and dilute, and I'm going to use that as a helpful sort of shadow colour up and down the entirety of the lighthouse. When I paint the red on the red stripes, I'm barely going to register this colour, but it's going to be very useful for the cream coloured white area of the lighthouse. And I also realised I haven't painted in this little path, so I've got some yellow ochre. Lovely. So for the red, I'm going to use my organic vermilion, because that's just a really lovely, classic, easy red. And we also have the top of the lighthouse, which I'm going to mix up some Payne's grey and a little bit of burnt sienna to make a cool grey. There we go. So I'm just going to wait for those shadowy bits to dry, and so I will paint there we go, and also this little section in here. Leaving tiny bits of unpainted space for highlights, and then we will build those up. Okay, let's paint in some red. So I had a tiny little bit of green overlap onto the building, so that's great. I can just cover it over with my red. With that red painted in, I can take a little bit of alizarin crimson and just pop it down the side. And then whilst I'm waiting for that to dry, I can use my my little shadowy colour again. to create a little bit of interest on these sections here. Put some stronger Payne's grey in sort of as a shadow here. And then I think time for a smaller brush, a 4/10, and a little bit of Mars Black, or Ivory Black even, which I haven't really used a lot at all recently. To make a little sort of fence barrier thing. Okay, and then just to fill in the windows, and we can start looking at details around the edge. So to make it look like a postage stamp, I'm going to do a sort of just a slightly wobbly, hand-drawn, old school sort of postage stamp perforation. So if you hit a corner, you can just sort of do a sort of diagonal like that. And again, I've sort of chosen not to do it using a ruler or anything like that, because I think the charm of these things is when they're a bit more hand done. And I think what I'll do is I'll do like a, whoops, I'll do an outline of it, but I might also create like a tiny bit of shadow on it as well, so it looks like a real postage stamp, and then I can write a message on. And so so I'm going to write Plymouth, just finding the middle really. Roughly the middle, and then Devon. I might change my font here. And then I think maybe greetings from. So find my sort of rough central line. Greetings, I'll write it out on a rough thing. So GREETINGS. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm looking for the fifth letter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But there is an I in there, so that's normally a narrower letter. So I'm probably looking more sort of just to the right of centre. I'll put my T. Let's see if that works. That's my sort of rather unscientific way. Or should I have done it the other way? I should have done it the other way, shouldn't I? Oh well, let's see. That's not bad. And then I was going to do just a little. not bad. Okay, so I'm going to take my kneadable eraser once more, knock back all this pencil, and then I'm going to do some fine lines with yellow ochre. You could choose any colour you wanted really, but I quite liked the gold with the yellow ochre. So you can see I'm just very, very simply writing that in with my size 0 brush. And then now I'm going to take a slightly smaller brush with a 4/10, and this feels a bit more like painting than writing. I'm left-handed, so I tend to do my lettering backwards. Just because that's what I like to do, and I haven't yet done the postage stamp border because what I want to do is first put the shadow in behind it before I paint on top, which might seem like a strange way to do things, but I have my reasons. Okay, so here I've got that bit of shadow from earlier. I'm going to dilute it right down, and what I'm going to do is just a little bit in behind, so that I'd get that in and let it dry before I paint in my yellow ochre. Why is one side always so much more difficult than the other? Funny, isn't it? So I'm just outlining the yellow ochre on the stamp outline with my 4/10 brush, and that little bit of shadow underneath I think works really well. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I hope you might want to adapt this to a card of your own design. There we go. Just give a little rub out. There we go. So thank you, and don't forget to share your work on social media and tag us so we can see what you've come up with. And of course, make sure you like and subscribe to the video so you won't miss any more in future. And I'll see you again soon. Thanks, bye.